I found out my wife was cheating on me 3 weeks before the world shut down for COVID. That timing mattered more than people realize. Under normal circumstances, discovering your spouse is having an affair usually leads to separation, screaming matches, sleeping on couches, staying with friends, some kind of immediate physical distance. But in March of 2020, nobody was going anywhere. The entire country felt frozen. Restaurants closed, flights got canceled, offices shut down, and somehow in the middle of all that chaos, I was stuck, quarantined inside a house with a woman I suddenly didn't recognize anymore. The first clue had been small. Always is. Nobody catches an affair because their spouse twirls a mustache and announces it dramatically. It starts with weird little things your brain tries to rationalize away. Her phone suddenly stayed face down all the time. She laughed at texts but angled the screen away from me. Late-night work emergencies became more common. And the biggest one? She became strangely protective of her privacy after spending 10 years sharing literally everything with me. At first, I convinced myself I was paranoid, because honestly, once you've built a life with someone, your brain fights hard against the idea that they could betray you. You explain things away because the alternative is too painful. Then one night she fell asleep on the couch with her phone unlocked beside her. And there it was. Messages from a coworker named Ryan. Not work messages, not even subtle messages. I remember staring at the screen while my chest physically hurt. There's no dramatic soundtrack when you discover something like that. No cinematic moment where everything suddenly becomes crystal clear. It's quieter than people imagine, more numb. You just sit there scrolling through conversations you were never supposed to see while your entire marriage quietly collapses in your head. In jokes, flirting, photos, plans. At one point he literally texted, "Wish I was quarantined with you instead." In her response, "Me too." That sentence stuck in my brain like a nail. I didn't confront her immediately. Honestly, I don't even know why. Maybe shock, maybe fear, maybe some desperate part of me still hoped there was an explanation that would magically make everything okay. Eventually, after 2 days of pretending I hadn't seen anything, I confronted her in the kitchen. I'll never forget it. She was making coffee like it was a normal morning, and I just said, "Who's Ryan?" The mug almost slipped out of her hand. That told me everything before she even spoke. Then came the usual avalanche. Crying, denial, partial truths. It's not what you think. We were just talking. I was lonely. He understood me. Every cliché you've ever heard showed up right on schedule. Eventually, she admitted that it had become physical. According to her, it had only happened a few times. I didn't believe that for a second. But weirdly, during those first weeks of lockdown, we actually tried to reconcile. I know that sounds insane. People always say they'd leave instantly if they got cheated on, but real life is messier than internet confidence. When you've built a marriage with someone, untangling your lives emotionally feels impossible, and during quarantine, isolation magnified everything. We talked constantly, had long emotional conversations at 2 a.m., cried together. She apologized over and over, swore it was over, blocked his number in front of me. Promised counseling, promised honesty, promised change. And for a while, I believed her. Or maybe I just wanted to. There's a difference. Over the next year, things slowly started feeling normal again, at least on the surface. We settled into routines, went back to work eventually, started acting like a married couple again. Friends thought we'd survived something difficult together. Meanwhile, deep down, I never fully trusted her again. That's the thing people don't talk about enough after infidelity. Even if the relationship continues, something fundamental changes permanently. You start noticing pauses before answers. You remember inconsistencies. Your brain quietly collects evidence while your heart tries to move on. Still, by the following year, I'd almost convinced myself we were going to make it. Then came Hawaii. Ironically, the trip was supposed to symbolize a fresh start. We'd postponed vacations because of COVID restrictions and finally decided to take a long overdue trip to Maui. 7 days. Beaches, resorts, couples therapy homework, the whole rebuilding the marriage experience. For the first few days, things actually felt good. We drank Mai Tais by the ocean, went snorkeling, took sunset photos together. There were moments where I genuinely thought, maybe we're okay. Maybe we survived this. Then came the flight home. At the time, airlines still required vaccination documentation for certain travel procedures, and my wife had somehow messed up uploading hers. So while we were sitting in the hotel room packing, she tossed me her phone and said, "Can you fix my vaccine passport thing?" Simple request, completely routine, and honestly, I wasn't even snooping. I opened her messages because she mentioned the airline confirmation text might still be there. That's when I saw his name. Ryan. Again. My stomach dropped instantly. The text thread was active. Very active. Not old messages. Current ones. Time-stamped throughout the entire vacation. While lying beside me on Hawaiian beaches, she'd been texting the guy she cheated with the whole trip. I remember feeling strangely calm. Not because it didn't hurt, because it hurt so badly my brain almost shut down emotionally. You know those moments where something becomes so obvious that all the confusion disappears? That's what it felt like. Every lingering doubt vanished instantly. The marriage was over. Not maybe over, not needs work. Over. And suddenly, instead of sadness, I felt clarity. Cold clarity. Because this time there would be no counseling, no second chance, no emotional speeches in the kitchen. I was done. But I also realized something important immediately. I couldn't explode yet. We still had a 12-hour travel day ahead of us. Flights, airports, shared luggage, customs, and I needed time to prepare my exit properly before she knew I knew. So instead of confronting her, I did something else, entirely. I sat there on the edge of the hotel bed, holding her phone while she zipped up her suitcase across the room, completely unaware that our marriage had just officially died. That sounds dramatic, but it's true. There's a specific moment in situations like that where something inside you shuts off emotionally. Not forever, not permanently, but enough to survive what comes next. And in that exact moment, survival mode kicked in. I looked down at the messages again. Ryan, wish I was there instead of him. Her, you'd make this trip way more fun. Timestamp, 2 hours earlier. 2 hours earlier, she'd been holding my hand during a catamaran tour, pretending everything was okay. That kind of betrayal changes the temperature of your blood. But instead of confronting her, screaming, or throwing the phone across the room like a movie scene, I quietly made a decision. She didn't deserve a warning. Not yet, because during the first affair, I'd reacted emotionally. I'd cried, begged for honesty, tried counseling, tried rebuilding trust. I gave her every opportunity to tell the truth and repair the damage, and she looked me dead in the eye for over a year, pretending she wanted the marriage, while secretly keeping him around the entire time. So no, this time I was going to think strategically. I casually asked, "Hey, what's Ryan's new number again? Didn't you say he switched phones recently?" That got her attention immediately. Only for half a second, but I saw it. Tiny pause, tiny panic. Then she recovered. "Oh, yeah, I think so." She tried sounding casual, but suddenly her shoulders looked tense. I smiled like nothing was wrong. Then, while pretending to fix her airline stuff, I deleted the entire message thread and blocked his number. Took maybe 15 seconds. That was it. No confrontation, no speech, just gone. Then I handed her phone back calmly and said, "You're all set." To this day, it remains one of the most satisfying moments of my life, because the psychological torture began instantly. At first, she didn't notice. We headed downstairs, grabbed dinner at the resort restaurant, and she acted completely normal. But about halfway through dinner, I watched her casually pick up her phone under the table. Then came the first flicker of panic. Her eyes narrowed slightly. She unlocked it again, scrolled, locked it.
unlocked it again, trying to not look suspicious. I nearly laughed into my drink. The beauty of the situation was that she couldn't confront me without exposing herself. Think about it. How exactly was she supposed to confront me? "Hey, honey, did you happen to delete the secret messages between me and the guy I cheated on you with?" Not exactly an easy conversation starter. So instead, she had to sit there silently unraveling. And over the next 24 hours, it got glorious. Not revenge movie glorious, subtle glorious. The kind where someone slowly realizes the walls are closing in while pretending everything is fine. That night in the hotel room, she kept checking her phone every few minutes, refreshing apps, opening contacts, typing, deleting again, typing again. At one point, she even restarted the phone entirely. I pretended not to notice any of it. We were supposed to spend our last full day in Hawaii relaxing before the long flight home. Instead, she looked like someone waiting for a bomb to go off. By breakfast the next morning, she was visibly jittery, constantly distracted, barely eating. Every notification sound from anyone else's phone made her glance up anxiously. Meanwhile, I was having the time of my life internally. Not because I enjoyed hurting her, but because for the first time in 2 years, she was the nervous one. For over a year, I'd carried anxiety, suspicion, self-doubt, and paranoia, while she calmly lied to my face. Now suddenly, she was experiencing uncertainty, and it ate her alive. At one point, while we were sitting on the beach, she casually asked, "Did you use my phone for anything besides the vaccine thing?" I nearly admired the attempt. Smooth, indirect, careful. I shrugged. Nope. Technically true. I hadn't used it for anything else. I simply improved it. Her face tightened slightly. Then she forced a smile. The entire rest of the day became this bizarre psychological chess match where she desperately wanted answers while pretending not to care. Meanwhile, I had already emotionally detached. That's the strange thing about betrayal. Once you fully accept reality, the fear disappears. Pain stays, obviously, but fear vanishes because there's nothing left to lose. I stopped trying to save the marriage the second I saw those texts. Everything after that became logistics. By the time we boarded the flight home, she looked exhausted and terrified. Not because I'd threatened her, because silence is scarier sometimes, especially guilty silence. The flight itself was brutal. 12 straight hours of tension. We barely spoke. She kept glancing towards me like she was waiting for an explosion that never came. At one point during the flight, she actually asked, "Are you okay?" I looked at her for a second and smiled. Yeah, why wouldn't I be? That answer destroyed her. You could see it. Because she knew something had changed. She just didn't know how much I knew yet. And honestly, that uncertainty was the revenge. Not yelling, not insults, not drama. Just forcing her to sit inside the exact kind of anxiety she put me through for over a year. By the time we landed back in the mainland United States, I had already mentally moved on. Not emotionally healed, that takes much longer, but mentally, done. Still, I knew I needed a few more days before officially ending things. I had to get organized, separate finances carefully, secure documents, figure out living arrangements. Most importantly, I needed evidence, because after surviving one round of lies already, I no longer trusted verbal confessions. I wanted proof of everything before divorce discussions started. So, for the next 3 days, I played the role of normal husband while quietly preparing my exit. And during those 3 days, her behavior became even more frantic. She bought a new phone charger because she thought maybe her old one caused sync issues. She contacted her cell provider, asking if deleted contacts could disappear during updates. She even casually mentioned one night, "My phone's been acting weird lately." I almost laughed out loud. Meanwhile, while she panicked over one deleted text thread, I found out she'd been hiding conversations elsewhere too. Private messaging apps, archived chats, an old email account. The deeper I looked, the worse it got. Turns out Hawaii wasn't some relapse or brief mistake. The affair had never truly ended at all. And weirdly, discovering that gave me peace, because it removed every lingering what if. No more wondering whether I gave up too soon, no more guilt about ending the marriage. She made the decision already. I was just finally catching up to reality.
For the next 3 days, I moved through the house like an undercover version of myself, calm on the outside, completely finished on the inside. And honestly, that was the strangest part of the whole experience. I always imagined if my marriage ended, it would happen explosively, shouting, slammed doors, dramatic confrontations. Instead, the end of my marriage looked like me quietly scanning bank statements at midnight while my wife brushed her teeth 10 feet away, pretending everything was normal. I started organizing everything carefully: important documents, savings information, retirement accounts, copies of insurance paperwork. I contacted a lawyer during my lunch break from work and scheduled a consultation without telling anyone. The attorney said something during that meeting that stuck with me. People make mistakes when emotions lead and logistics follow. Stay calm and handle logistics first. That became my entire mindset. Stay calm, handle logistics. Because deep down, I knew something else too. The second she realized I was actually leaving, the story would change. Affairs thrive in secrecy, but divorces become public. Suddenly, there are reputations, families, mutual friends, finances, and consequences involved. So I needed clarity before confrontation. And clarity came quickly. The more I dug, the uglier things became. The hidden apps alone told me everything I needed to know. People don't install encrypted messaging apps to discuss grocery lists. There were archived conversations, deleted photos recovered through backups, and entire stretches of communication that lined up perfectly with nights she claimed she was working late. At one point, I found messages sent while we were actively in marriage counseling. That one hit differently. Not because it surprised me anymore, because it showed how comfortable she'd become lying directly to my face while watching me fight for us. One message from Ryan read, "Does he actually think therapy is fixing things?" Her response, "He wants to believe it." I stared at that screen for a long time, not angry, not crying, just empty. Because betrayal eventually reaches a point where it stops feeling sharp and starts feeling cold, like emotional frostbite. You stop reacting dramatically because your brain finally accepts reality completely. That night, she cooked dinner like everything was normal: pasta, garlic bread, a glass of wine for both of us. At one point, she smiled and asked, "Do you think we should plan another trip this fall?" And honestly, hearing that almost impressed me. The level of compartmentalization required to discuss future vacations while actively cheating on your spouse is honestly terrifying. I looked at her across the table and realized something important. I didn't know this person anymore. Maybe I never fully did. That realization hurt more than the affair itself. People think cheating destroys trust, but what it really destroys is certainty. Suddenly, every memory feels unstable. Every happy moment gets re-examined under a different light. Was she lying then, too? Did she text him after anniversaries, after birthdays, after family dinners? You start mentally rewriting your own history against your will, and eventually you understand why so many marriages never recover from infidelity, even when both people technically try. Because trust isn't a switch. Once your brain learns someone can betray you convincingly, it never forgets. By the fourth day after Hawaii, I was ready, financially prepared, emotionally detached enough to function, and armed with enough evidence that there was no room left for denial or manipulation. I waited until evening. Nothing dramatic, no audience, no screaming. She was sitting on the couch watching some home renovation show when I walked in, holding a folder. The second she saw my face, she knew. I think part of her had known since Hawaii, not specifics maybe, but enough. "What's wrong?" she asked quietly. I sat across from her and placed the folder on the coffee table. Inside were printed screenshots, financial records, and copies of messages, the entire affair timeline. She didn't even touch the folder.
Her face just drained of color instantly. "How much do you know?" she whispered. And weirdly, that question made me laugh, not because it was funny, because after years together, after therapy, after promises, after Hawaii, the first thing she asked wasn't, "Can we fix this?" It was damage assessment. How much? That told me everything. "Enough," I said. Then came the tears, again. But this time, it felt completely different from the first confrontation years earlier. The first time, I still loved her enough to hope. This time, I felt like I was watching weather happen, emotion without connection. She cried, apologized, tried explaining, tried minimizing things, tried blaming confusion and loneliness and emotional distance, but none of it mattered anymore. Once someone betrays you repeatedly after being given another chance, the emotional debate ends. There's nothing left to argue about. At one point, she asked the question almost everybody asks during the death of a relationship: "When did you decide you were done?" And I answered honestly, "Hawaii." She looked confused for a second, then suddenly her expression changed. Realization. "You deleted the messages." Not a question, a statement. I nodded once, and for the first time since this entire situation started, I saw genuine fear in her face. Not fear of yelling, not fear of violence, fear of understanding that I had emotionally slipped away without her noticing. Because during that final vacation, while she panicked over disappearing messages and blocked contacts, I was quietly accepting the end of our marriage. The revenge wasn't deleting the texts. The revenge was staying calm enough to let her sit in uncertainty while I reclaimed control of my own life. People underestimate how powerful composure can be. She expected rage, meltdowns, begging. What she got instead was a man who calmly prepared his exit while she unraveled internally. And honestly, that hurt her far more. The divorce itself wasn't particularly dramatic after that. Painful, yes. Expensive, obviously, but surprisingly civil considering everything. We divided assets, signed paperwork, went our separate ways. A few mutual friends eventually learned the truth. Others didn't. I stopped caring either way. Because somewhere during those final days, I realized something important. Closure doesn't come from revenge. It comes from indifference. The moment I truly healed wasn't when we signed divorce papers. It wasn't when she admitted everything. It wasn't even when I blocked Ryan's number on her phone. It was months later when I realized an entire day had passed without thinking about her at all. That's when I knew I was free. Looking back now, I'm honestly proud of how I handled the whole thing. Not perfect, not emotionless, but controlled. I didn't destroy property, didn't scream, didn't publicly humiliate her. I simply observed, prepared, and walked away when the truth became undeniable. And honestly, that tiny moment in Hawaii remains my favorite memory from the entire collapse of the marriage. Not because it fixed anything, but because for 24 beautiful hours, the person who betrayed me finally experienced the same uncertainty, panic, and helplessness she'd forced on me for years. And honestly, that felt pretty damn satisfying.